Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up.
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
Where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands
upcoming tours.
and show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
Halloween 2023, Stuart Bogie.
Welcome back to the spookiest episode of the year. Let's jump right in. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Amanda, and I'm always scared, Kevin. So for me, this is just a normal week.
And this is the All That Jam weekly wrap up, a lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands. Last week we sat down with the incomparable Maggie Rose, Tab alumni and member of Lamp, Russ Lawton, and an up and coming trio called Sugar Business that have been making waves in the Northeast. This week we have our interview with Stuart Bogie coming up. A look at what the people want to hear Fish play by way of covers, because it is Halloween, and the top 3 stories of the week. How was your week, Amanda?
Kevin, it was a good week. It was pretty quiet, but you know what? I needed that, I think, after the event on the 19th. So I've just been enjoying getting back into more of a normal schedule. Although, very typical for me, the day after the event at New Conscious was over, I felt ready to do something else and I was already bored. So there you go.
It's nice to have things to do.
It is.
Yeah, I didn't get to do much either. I watched some more Spafford. I've been becoming a big Spafford fan. They're touring like Montana. They're playing all these out of the way places, so good for them. We had Way Down North. One of the shows was the show they opened, but they didn't do the opening band, so I didn't get to see them actually play live.
How cool. Maybe Way Down North has a recording. I'll see if I can find that.
Yeah, that would be cool. Because this was Spafford's official channel. So it's possible the bar was running it too, somewhere. So, without further ado, why don't we jump into the
top 3
All right,
stories
Kevin,
of the
I've
week.
got some stories for us. And Kevin, when I sent this first one to you, I think I put a little asterisk around it saying, I really don't want to talk about Taylor Swift anymore. And that's just maybe my issue. Clearly, the woman is super, super, talented at everything. And I love that people are so into her, but it just seems like her name is everywhere in celebrity stuff, news. Regardless of who she's dating, though, she did just break the Spotify record for most streamed album in a single day with 1989 that was just released, I believe, this past Friday. And so, really, that's exciting. But she had actually previously held that record for Midnights, which was released in 2022. So, is it really that exciting? I don't
now
know.
was Midnight's redoing an old album like this was, or
I don't think so. And I'll be honest, I really know very little about her music, but I don't think that it was the same type of re-release, or I guess in this case, 1989 is newly recorded editions
right, to
of
keep
all
the guy
13.
who originally was her manager from getting money because he had her roped into some weird mechanical license deal or something.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing, though. I couldn't really find how many streams it was. I guess it doesn't matter, but she's done it again. So, that's something worth talking about.
The actual number is proprietary information.
It must be, because even in her own official post, you'd think they'd want to throw it out there, but I don't know. I just believe Spotify. They wouldn't lie to me, would they?
No, they wouldn't.
Of course not. So speaking of music stories that, I have different kinds of connections with, Kevin, I think you've got something related to this one. I found a story. Oh, wait, hold on. Kevin, did I share this one last week? I think I did, about the Universal Music. That's an old one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I had it still. How did I have it still up here? All right, never mind. Moving on. Okay, Kevin, we are crossing genres for the second story this week. And I know that so many people out there are big Rush fans, and I get it. I love them too. Geddy Lee is set to host a new show about bassists featuring Les Claypool, lots and lots of other people. And the title of this, which is going to be a Paramount Plus docuseries, is currently called Geddy Lee Asks, Are Bass Players Human Too? I love that.
It's going to be good.
I think it's going to be fantastic. So, there are just icons and legends that are going to be involved in this from what I've read, representing a lot of different bands like Nirvana, Metallica, and many others. But it's not just a show of sitting down and talking to people. Apparently, Geddy Lee is going to take part in a bunch of different activities with these people, such as canning tomatoes, fishing, flying an airplane, and surfing. There will be music too.
I think I saw a picture of Les Claypool and him fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be the fishing episode. It's
That's
very interesting. I like it.
I
And
love it.
plus you get to see Geddy Lee. He's the nicest man in the world from everything I've ever heard, and interviews with him and from other people, and
I think also it's clear that he's got a really great sense of humor, because I guess in the trailer he makes a comment that he's trying to show the world that a bass player can do anything. And just, taking that kind of age-old stereotype, I guess, or, kind of joking around about bassists, which we hear all the time. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Kevin, right? Their
I do.
personalities are just maybe a little bit different from a lead guitarist.
The question is, are there more jokes about drummers or bassists?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know, but there's lots about both. That's for sure. And actually, I follow some really great bass player related Instagram accounts, and they're hilarious poking fun at themselves. So I thought this was a really kind of different way to explore music. And in terms of when that's going to be rolling out, there are going to be 4 parts. So this is a limited edition type of series, and that's going to begin airing on December 5th.
Nice.
Yeah. So that is our second story.
Binge it at Christmas.
Yes, right. Exactly. Just roll right in, Don't worry about spending time with your family. Just watch Geddy Lee. It's probably more comforting than anything else you could do. So that might be my suggestion. And then third, I just saw news about Sun, Sand, and Soul. This is an inaugural beach weekend type of festival that Tedeschi Trucks Band is throwing. And they are going to be holding this in Florida, Miramar Beach. This will be early May of 2024. We've got Maggie Rose is on that bill, St. Paul and Broken Bones, JJ Gray and Mofo, Karina Reichman. I mean, really some fantastic artists, as well as Dwayne Betts. So a lot of All That Jam connection there. But Kevin, here was my thought. When I first saw this, I thought, this could be that kind of festival and lineup that gets people to the beach without having to put a passport and international travel involved, and probably much, much more cost effective for a lot of people. So I'm curious to see how they do regarding ticket sales, because people have to make tough decisions about where they're going to go and when. So I'm curious.
You do have to go to Florida, though.
You do have to go to Florida, but what I've heard is that this is kind of a area that's maybe away from other things that you might not want to deal with. So, I'm curious.
I don't think I saw any of the more Jamtronica stuff, which I found interesting, that this lineup was more the roots rock, Americana flavor kind of thing, which I like. I like that.
Me too. And I think that I'm just kind of thinking about, so for instance, that I'm recently, but a Strings and Soul attendee. I went last year for the first time. It truly blew me away, honestly. I don't know what I was waiting for all these years, but I think about that lineup and something like this. Yes, they're different, but more than likely, if you enjoy the Strings and Soul lineup, you're going to be happy with this one. So if you have to make a choice, that might be a determining factor if they're able to keep this festival going for a while.
And the Tedeschi Trucks demographic probably skews more over 35, 40 kind of thing, as opposed to the younger crowd.
I agree. Yeah, and so wherever they're holding it, apparently it's a great place with a lot of different activities. And the bottom
Nice.
line is it's on the beach. Now, I did not go through the entire process for pre-sale. I was curious how much this whole festival is going to be. I haven't been able to figure out exactly what all of the costs are yet. But that is something I'm definitely very, very interested in.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wait a second. I lied. Nope, just kidding. Cut that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, they have prices, but it's so spaced out that it's hard to get a total,
Right.
interestingly. So,
There you
anyways,
go. Very
yeah, so
good.
those are our stories for the week.
Nice, nice. So yeah, I'm going to be looking for the Geddy Lee. The Tedeschi trucks does look fun. I'm always glad to see people trying the new festivals. I know that it's can be a crapshoot whether you get people to show up. I mean, the weather's bad, boom, you're done. You might not get a second chance, kind of thing. So
Well, that's right. And, even in my circles, my close music circles with Todd Schaefer having not only canceled the recent Railroad Earth Colorado run because he has a respiratory condition that's affecting his vocal cords pretty seriously. Railroad Earth has canceled their entire Northeast run that would have been happening very soon, as well as some other shows. But Todd is supposed to be back, he's thinking by the end of November. A bunch of us were wondering what would happen to Railroad Earth at Strings and Soul. Hopefully they'd figure something out, but when you have that one voice that really is so much the hallmark of a band, all of a sudden you realize how tenuous it can be, right? If something happens.
yeah, a bunch of guest vocalists doing different tunes.
Sure. Yeah,
Kind of
definitely.
thing.
Always ways to do it. And this one is hosted by Topeka. I don't really know that much about them. I guess that's maybe a company that manages these types of events. Looks like they've got a couple other beach weekends that they do down there. So, something for me to check out because I hadn't heard of them before.
We'll put a link
There we go.
down below. All right, let's jump into this interview with Stuart Bogie. He talks a little bit about his time working with TV on the radio. If you are a fan of Golden Age and you have heard the original, the horns on there are done by Mr. Bogie. Also, we talk about how he went from playing clarinet to sax and also a solo clarinet project that he is doing. And after that, we'll see you on the other side. How do you end up making musically, I guess you would call it a 180 to working with Dave Sitek? I don't want to crush the guy's name.
Sitek. Yeah.
With TV on the radio, I guess the yeahs, that whole 2000 New York scene that
Holly
sprung
Miranda
up.
and Foles, and we did some records. Well, Dave had a studio in Williamsburg. The place is now a J. Crew.
Nice.
I went in there a couple years ago. I was like, wait, man, this looks really familiar.
My kid wanted me to take her to CBGB, and I was like, "It's not there anymore, baby doll." I was like, "It sells something, suits, maybe clothing. I'm not even sure what the store is now."
Yeah, there's new places to go now. You could take her to New Blue or a Sultan Room or Trans Picos. There's a lot of great clubs in New York, but they come and go just like we do, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sitek lived in Williamsburg, as did Kip and Tunde and Jaleel and Gerard in TV on the radio. And we were all part of the same community. Martine Perna, the founder of Antibalas, went to school and lived with Dave and Tunde. And I met them through him, and we all hung out. And just by being around, eventually somebody said, "Oh, bring your instrument, come over to the studio." And it was like that. I would wake up in the morning living in Williamsburg and not know what I was going to do that day till I went and had a bagel and a coffee, find somebody making a record or find somebody to make a record with, and then go get to work. And that's how I spent my time when I didn't have a rehearsal or a tour or something.
Very nice, very nice. And you ended up on the road with TV on the radio, right?
Yeah, I did the album cycle for the for the record called Dear Science. And I played on 3 or 4 of the records. But Dear Science I played on a ton, and I did the tour with them. It's about a year of activity.
Now, was this sax that you were playing, or was it clarinet and sax?
On the records, I'd play all kinds of stuff, but on the tour, it was all tenor sax.
Okay.
On the tour. Now, after me, they brought in Dave Smuda Smith, a wonderful trombone player, and I found that the sound and impact that the trombone had worked a lot better. When I heard them, I was like, yes, this is your fit. As much as I love their music, which is like some of my favorite music that's ever been made by anyone in my generation. Do you know what I mean? That I go back, I listen to those records all the time, and I just want to go make more music when I hear them. It's that inspiring for me. But the trombone, man, I wish I could play trombone like that. It sounded so good.
Have you ever heard Bonerama out of New Orleans? Mark Mullen's band.
Yeah.
They have 5 trombones. He has 5
that's
trombones.
Party set, man. Trombone, the more the better. More is more.
And he has his hooked up to a wah-wah. He has like as many pedals as some guitar players that he plays with it.
I like that.
So you started on clarinet and then picked up saxophone later?
Yeah. When I got laid off from the .com job, I had some time on my hands and I didn't have any money. I was scraping by. I was getting by. I certainly wasn't poor. I had a wonderful middle class upbringing, but I had to. I couldn't spend it. I didn't have any money to spend, so I'd spend some time at home, in my apartment, to the disappointment of my neighbors, working out on the alto saxophone, trying to learn how to play Nefertiti.
Right. Now, the saxophone, I guess, has more commercial potential in rock and roll than a clarinet, huh?
Oh man, once I got the sax sounding good enough, it was woo! Life got much more interesting and exciting. I got to play all kinds of stuff, and like I'd always been a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, but I'd never been. I mean, if I play a Clarence Clemens style on the clarinet, apart from doing a hora at a Jewish wedding, it's not going to have the emotional impact that I would want it to. It's like this, what do they call it? It's like, it's like you're screaming into a tiny little instrument. You know what I mean? But the tenor sax, oh my gosh, you talk about Albert Ayler and Pharaoh and Clarence Clemens and Bobby Keys. And there's this whole tradition of really getting your scream on with the thing. And,
all those 50s and 60s early rock and roll records all have
that stuff still intimidates me. The technique, and to get so excited and play with such sensitivity at the same time, that blows my mind.
And I've heard that like a lot of times they weren't amped. The rest of the band was. You'd have electric guitar and electric bass, and then he'd be. It's all lung power there.
It is, yeah. And then you moan and sing and groan in different ways. You vocalize in ways that collide with the vibration of the reed, and it gives it this different rub.
Right.
And there's all kinds of stuff. There's a man named Earl Bostic who was a big influence on Pharaoh and I think Train. And he had that. It's like he had gain on a saxophone. It was like it. In fact, I think the amplifiers were imitating the sound of someone like Earl Bostic. He's a tremendous saxophone player.
Right. Once the guitar got dirty, it was all downhill.
Yeah.
So also during quarantine, I guess from what I read, the solo clarinet project thing you did. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, it's I break it down on the website. It's it was a week into the quarantine, maybe a few days, and you remember the feeling. We were all terrified. I was in a house with children, and I was experiencing it, through their lens, as people say these days, the lens. We didn't know what to do. And my partner, she said, "Get your clarinet, play." So I pulled it out, and she threw on Instagram, and I started to play. And I just improvised, basically like a rhapsody. Pretty much meterless improvisation. And I love to improvise, and I love the feeling of form unfolding, as the author Stephen Nachmanovich has talked about in his book Free Play, which is critical to the way I feel music. But the next day we did it again, and then we did it again, and we did it again, and it lasted 150 days. We did it, and then Zoom school started, and then my morning routine changed. It was like, okay, we gotta figure out how to get these kids a Zoom class.
All right. Now, did you find we've talked to a lot of people, and as much as quarantine and COVID sucked for the world and for most people on different levels, a lot of people expressed that it gave them a chance to step back and assess their music. You didn't have to go out and play. You couldn't go out and play live gigs anymore. Did you find anything like that? Did you discover anything during quarantine about your playing and yourself?
Yeah. So, to be honest, I did a real about face. Like you said, 180 degrees. I went back to the clarinet, which was my first instrument, and I went to it kind of on my knees to feel some sort of mercy in the universe and in life, and to feel something beautiful, and to feel a connection that I deeply needed, that everyone needed. And so the clarinet was there for me. And my partner, Karen, she was instrumental, to no pun intended, in making all of this happen, facilitating this. But it was, I went back to the beginning of my musical training, I guess you'd say. And what I was playing was just me seeking the musical objects that were between my mind and the universe, and just trying to open up. We had a process where, we'd meditate and we'd pray, and then I'd put on a decent shirt, and then we'd throw on the camera, and I'd play for, I don't know, between 8 and 25 minutes. But no, it really, really rearranged my musical practice. Now I still play to drones like that, but I usually just do it alone. Sometimes I throw it online.
Kevin, I think Stuart is one of those musicians that does so much and has done so much. I didn't know a lot about his background before our chat with him, so it was really eye-opening for me. And I know we have a little bit more to get into with Stuart, but before we do that, as always, want to remind everyone that we are on social media at All That Jam Pod, as well as allthatjampod.com. And anywhere that you are finding your podcasts, you will find us. Just search. And make sure that you like and subscribe, especially on YouTube as well. That might be an area that you're not really thinking of, but head over there and let us know that you're listening. We'd really appreciate it. Kevin, do you want to tell us what's coming up this week?
Yes, let me tell you what you'll be listening to this week. Tomorrow we have Frankie and the Witch Fingers, their origin story. It's a little weird. I asked about playing psychedelic garage rock, and they were all kind of like, we don't really play that. And I was like, what I mean is, and I had to reframe it. But it's good because I made a comeback, and I actually got to the heart of what I was trying to get to with.
That's great.
We'll
I love it.
Wednesday, we have Maggie Rose. She has a single that came out last Friday. Another one coming up this Friday. We hear all about that. Thursday, Isaac Haddon and the Isaac Haddon Organ Trio. Isaac is a guitar player, and he named his band the Organ Trio, so we'll find out why. Friday, Dwayne Betts, on advice he got from his dad, and honoring the Allman Brothers legacy and what he does now, which is fascinating. Brian Thomas, right? Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas is going to be on Saturday, and I'm calling this Horn for Hire because he's talking about playing with all the different bands that he plays with. Sunday, we got Mike Chavarro on King Canyon, which is his project with Eric Krasno. Now, let's jump back into this interview. We have Stuart's talking about Wooden Hands, which is another project he has. I asked him about songwriting, and we got into songwriting versus composing, which was fascinating because I never thought about that. And we talked a lot about playing instrumental music and the music industry in general. So let's check that out. We were getting into Wooden Hands. You said you were in the
Yeah.
studio recently?
Oh yeah, we're going in the studio in a couple weeks to make our first EP, and we've done 3 or 4 shows. In the group, I have Ronaldo de Jesus, an amazing percussionist who's in Antibalas, among other bands. Adam Roberts, upright bass player who I went to college with, University of Michigan, in the '90s, and a wonderful guitarist named Will Grafe. He's incredible, and oftentimes Scott Metzger will play with us as well. Another incredible guitarist, always acoustic guitar, and then the other percussion is Elizabeth Poopa Walker, who's wonderful. She played with the Dap Kings and
Right, the Dab Kings, yeah.
Russell, and she works with all kinds of folks. My friend Kochemea, she plays on his records and tours with him. So there's a constant dialogue between the two percussion. That's
Right. And these are all new compositions written for this, or are they covers, or was it just composed in,
Yeah.
you're just going to go with.
I have a new set of compositions that I've started and that I'm going to record for the EP. When we play live, we'll do some compositions that I've written over the last 30 years. I'll pull ones out that I want to share and try and explore that way. We learned a Duke Ellington song because I know we played a jazz festival and I'd always wanted to play the song Come Sunday by Duke Ellington. Gorgeous harmony.
So you said you pulled old things out. What's your progression, or do you feel like you have a progression or a point of view as a songwriter? Can you trace what you did 30 years ago to what is happening now and see an arc through it?
Yeah, I think it's just constantly striving to express. You're reaching into the same void to find the surprises and the inspiration. Yeah, it's the same. I unfortunately don't have as much time to compose as I used to.
Life gets in the way, huh?
It does. And because I have performing commitments, I'll practice because, you don't want to go out there and you want to remember how to play the instrument when you're in front of people. So that always feels a little bit more pressing of a need than sitting down and working your way through some harmonies or reharmonies. And it makes me sad to think about because I do get so much joy out of trying to open myself up for creative ideas. But I put a lot of creativity into the arranging work that I do. I do all kinds of arranging for people. And I have a sort of compositional voice that informs that a lot. And I do a lot of, soundtracking things and composing for film. And I've done a bunch of work with modern dance lately and some visual art, collaborative stuff. But to answer the question, figuring out how to improvise a clarinet solo that has all the compositional dramatic elements of thematic recalls and kind of explore different places scratches a similar itch as the songwriting would. I haven't thought of it. I also never really thought of it as songwriting. Songwriting was part of it sometimes when there was words or a lyrical shape, but I've always thought of it more as composing because as long as I can remember, I was fascinated by music that wasn't necessarily a song. It would either be like, I loved breakdancing music when it came out in the early 80s, like early hip hop, the band Nucleus and the Dynamic 3, and house music was really popular on college radio in Chicago and you could hear it. And electronic music and new wave. And when I would hear the instrumentals without the lyrics, I was even more thrilled by it because I loved hearing the drum machines and the sequencers. And so I always loved instrumental music, which made it not feel like a song in the same way. Of course, it could be considered a song. I guess we're just talking about perspectives in a way. But where the arc has led me is to improvising it, and improvising it in a way that feels compositional.
Okay.
So it's spontaneous composing.
Do you feel that instrumental being going out and playing mostly instrumental? I guess some of the Antibala stuff you had lyrics on, right?
Oh,
Like
sure. Yeah.
that metal song. What was that?
Beaten Metal.
Yeah, Beaten Metal.
Yeah.
Didn't that have lyrics?
We never used the lyrics. I actually wrote some terrible lyrics, and thankfully we didn't use them. It was like a sort of a choir thing that I wanted to do.
Okay. It's harder to sell instrumental music. Do you ever think about that when you're, just people who come see instrumental music, I guess, pay attention more. I feel like songs have lyrics a lot of times to hold people's attention. So maybe they'll listen to the instrumental passage in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. For a long time, I operated in that way. And I realized I was making, what I was really thrilled about was the instrumental parts of vocal music. And I was looking to have the whole package in that way. And then I realized that what I needed to do was just make the parts that I was compelled to, just make the music sound the way I was compelled to, and let the universe and serendipity and collaboration take care of the rest. And it may feel like there's more vocal music being sold as a commodity or streamed and those things, but that's when your audience is fans.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my audience is my colleagues. It's
Right.
filmmakers, it's choreographers and dancers, it's visual artists, and it's people in dramatic industries. And then there's also advertising and film underscore and those kinds of things. And in those worlds, it's instrumental is the name of the game.
Right. Now, that's one of the best ways. I mean, talking to bands, sync licensing, getting in films, is really, besides playing live, is one of the few ways to survive as a musician. I mean, you aren't going to make your living off of Spotify.
That's true. That's true. But I do the music to survive. The music is what keeps me alive. And the rest is, I'm not going to pretend to understand economics enough.
Right.
I often think about the plight of the musician as worker and the necessity for kind of union practices. And I've been in and out of the musicians union, and there's a great group called the Music Workers Alliance that's really active right now in doing things for the rights of musicians. And there's all the kinds of ways that we need to collectively get together and figure out how to bargain in the interest of us and in the interest of the culture that we uphold. But it's important for me to remind myself that the music, it's not how to survive while doing music. It's doing the music to survive existence.
Right.
It's loving because loving.
Thanks, Kevin. Always great interviews. And I have to say that I've really started to think about our daily content drops in a different way even than I did before. And I would just encourage everybody to check those out, because I find myself popping into those when I'm doing things like folding the laundry, that kind of stuff that you're doing around the house, but it's not going to take you 2 hours. So definitely want to remind everybody to make sure you're checking out everything that's being posted up there. Now, Kevin, I'm always looking for ways to try to connect with fans like us, because that's really what we are at heart. Sometimes it's difficult to get traction on questions, and sometimes I don't think about it until the day before we record. That's another issue. But I noticed on Facebook this past weekend, the Surrender to the Flow Facebook page, which is very active, had posted a question asking people to share a cover song that they would love to see Fish play. And when I checked back a little bit later in that same day, they were at something like 900 comments. It was massive. And so I wrote to Christy over at Surrender to the Flow, who's a friend, and I said, hey, I'm a big nerd. I'm really curious to see what people are suggesting because this is such a huge thread. Can I take those responses, maybe do a little work in my spreadsheets and get some info back to you? And she said, sure. She probably wondered what in the world I was thinking. So I did. Kevin actually was able to get all of those comments. I think I got all of them, and basically put them into a massive spreadsheet, removed all the extra stuff, and ended up with right around 490-ish unique songs that were suggested. Wow. Yeah. And of course, all of those other comments were people explaining why, and great conversation. What really surprised me, maybe it shouldn't have, and I guess I should lead with that, the absolute wide-ranging list of artists and songs. I mean, literally everything from the Muppets to the Kinks, John Prine. I mean, it's in every single direction, which I guess says a lot about Phish fans in general, right? I mean, we listen to a lot of stuff. So does everybody. One thing I will mention that really jumped out at me, I believe in all of those songs, there were 2 Grateful Dead songs mentioned out of the 490 something.
Wow.
Yeah. So isn't that, so sometimes
Fire
it's
on
not.
the Mountain.
That was one. I don't remember what the other one was. But I guess, sometimes for me, it's about what's not there versus what is there. So I was looking for that. Maybe I can share, Kevin, a little bit of information, some of the results that I found that might be kind of fun. So if you're curious to know which artists were mentioned the most, so maybe they had a variety of songs, in their catalog that were mentioned, King Gizzard was the most commonly mentioned artist, with, I think, about 10 separate songs.
You can't see me rolling my eyes out there.
I can't. No, nobody can. And some of those songs were counted, of course, multiple times. That's the other thing I did, is look for duplicates as best as I could. So, some of those songs had 3 votes. I had to look up the Dripping Tap. Sorry, I don't know any of their music, so I might have to go and listen to some of this stuff. So they were the most commonly mentioned. After that was the band Yes. They had 8 songs. Wow. Pink Floyd also with 8 different songs. Taylor Swift, 6. And I really felt that those were really legitimate, authentic mentions. People were explaining why. And I love that they felt comfortable to do that. Steely Dan and Rush also both had 6 different songs. So
why have they never played Steely Dan? I've always wondered that.
And a lot of the Steely Dan comments were literally any song by Steely Dan. So you can kind of see where people are like, I don't care what you do, just can you please play something of theirs? So really, really interesting. And then, Kevin, I, of course, was curious to know, which songs kind of rose to the top. And when I was just going through all of the comments, I was pretty sure I could tell. And I was right, just because they kept coming up. So let me start with the top 5 here. And then, we can kind of figure out where we want to go from there. Okay, so top 5, we have Hocus Pocus by Focus. Do you know that song?
I do know that song.
I don't know that.
I have 45 of it.
Okay, well, that one had 4 votes, and a bunch of songs did have 4 votes. Estranged by Guns N' Roses, Master of Puppets, Goodbye Stranger by Supertramp, Cheap Sunglasses. Those all had, and Fame by David Bowie. Those all had 4 votes.
I always felt like that if anybody should do Goodbye Stranger, it's Goose.
Mm-hmm.
I could hear Peter singing it and Rick in the back going, Goodbye Stranger. Sorry.
Another thing too, and I guess this just happens when you're familiar with, multiple bands, a number of songs that were suggested are already covered by Goose, because Goose does a lot of wide-ranging genres in their cover songs, Escape, 80s. The Pina Colada song, Electric Avenue. So, I was seeing some that Goose does on a somewhat regular basis, or that they're known for in this list. But I will say about 5 Goose songs were suggested as well, usually with some kind of disclaimer that I know, but I think it would be awesome. So
Right.
that was interesting. Okay, so top 3 now, so I just mentioned way more than 5. November Rain. Oh my God, Kevin, this made me so happy. So happy.
Oh,
That song is everything to me. Number one, it's a karaoke go-to. So November Rain is one of my top karaoke songs of all time. I have my November Rain candle. It's almost time for me to pop that out. Very excited about that. I don't know what it is about that song. I love it. Now tell me what you think.
of November Rain.
Yeah.
I remember after their first album came out, they went into the studio and we were hearing they're going to put out a new album, and a bootleg got circulated of November Rain, like years before the actual
Mm-hmm.
song came out. And I remember not liking it because it had a piano, and I was like, "That's not Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses." It has grown on me. It's become a standard. It's a
Mm-hmm.
hair metal standard, you know.
It's beautiful. I have to say, I do find the lyrics, everything more relatable as time goes on.
Mm,
But I have to remember, I was 12
right.
when the single was released. Use Your Illusion 1 was
Yeah.
a really, really popular album. I mean, I'm thinking of kind of that era. We were all listening to it. We loved it. And just November Rain got me. It used to be the song I would listen to when I used to pretend to run and do 5Ks, which I hated, but I would always get to listen to that.
But you throw that on.
I'd throw that on and be okay. um, all right. Next, second place was Echoes by Pink Floyd. That had 12 unique votes.
Huh.
Yeah. And I was interested in this. I went back and I thought to myself, well, are these just repeated mentions, maybe in the same thread, but they were different people? And so this was on Metal. And it's an awesome song. I mean, nothing against it. I just was maybe surprised that there were not other Pink Floyd songs that were quite as popular on the list. And there were plenty.
Right. I like the Obscured by Cloud songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
So
it's a very interesting list. You can tell here that there are a lot of people in this scene who really know their music. I've learned of a couple new bands that I had never heard before. I'm never ashamed to admit that. And so I've got the spreadsheet. I have to fill it in a little bit more, but it's just about done. Now, Kevin, top song, Eminence Front,
uh,
19, almost 20 different votes for it. And I was kind of tickled because forever and ever, Eminence Front has been my entrance song. You know, like if you're going to walk into a room or in the airport and you want to get some swag, what song do
yeah.
you listen to kind of pump you up? Like your walk on song? That's
Mm-hmm.
been mine forever. Actually, it used to open every single one of my weekly radio shows for years. So there you go.
That's a good one.
It is a good one. Now, Goose also covers it. I would be very curious to see what Fish could do with it, but there would be a lot of support for it if it did happen from what I
It did.
saw.
How many
Yeah.
people was that?
19 I counted.
Wow.
And I'll be honest, I had to grab those comments, at a certain point so that I would be able to start working with them. That thread is well over 1,000 comments at this point. So I got a lot of them, but I can guarantee even a day after I scoop those, there's lots more.
Right. Who knows where it is now?
I have no idea. But I will definitely want to share this spreadsheet. It's just super interesting to me. You have every era, every genre, a lot of fun songs, and a lot of really obscure songs, too.
Nice. So what do you want to hear?
Well, that's a good question. I've been staring at 400 songs now for probably 2 days. So my brain is a little bit muddled because I've been listening to a lot of them that I didn't really know. And I think a lot of these that were suggested would be good. I guess it depends, Kevin, if you're looking for a cover song to be one of a couple things, right? Just simply fun, getting jiggy with it, right? Like just a fun kind of campy thing. Or do you want a song that they can really put their spin on, like completely? Or do you want them to just do kind of a classic rendition of something like a Johnny B. Good or Frankenstein,
Right.
and maybe jam it out, but more or less keep it as one of those closer type songs. So I honestly have no idea at this point because I have so many songs in my head, but I'd love to know if you have something that you've always wanted to hear them do.
I mean, just I think my top thing would be Paige to sing "Burn Down the Mission" by Elton John.
Okay.
And I think they need more instrumentals. And I've always wanted to hear them play Peter Gunn. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, I would like that. There were definitely a number of instrumentals that were mentioned, and Madman Across the Water by Elton John came in pretty close to the top.
Right. Yeah, you know who does that? Warren Haynes used to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was interesting too is a lot of people were posting comments like that. So if it was a song that another band had covered and someone really liked it, people were posting a lot of links to listen or watch YouTube videos. So just a lot of information. And when I see that, it's hard for me not to want to do something with it. So it was nice to just take a little bit of time and make some sense out of all those comments.
Something fun.
Something fun for me.
And with that, I'll just say, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long. I'll talk to you soon, Amanda.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a great week.